seats and start this little show for today. So, good afternoon and welcome to the March meeting of Indivisible Conejo and our CVUSD Challengers Forum. I want to thank you all for being here. There is such an array of folks here, from teachers to our special guests to concerned citizens of a different sort than some people talk about. Anyway, we really appreciate you coming. This is an important process here early in the year as we get ready for November. You're going to see 4 candidates on the stage in a little while, and they're doing a great and brave thing, and they have shown their interest early, and I think that that's a wonderful thing. The way this is going to go is that I'm going to yammer at you for a couple minutes, and I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Betsy Connolly, who will give a talk about what our candidates need to do and what we need to do over the next 8 months. And then we'll have our forum. It'll last about 80 minutes, and then at the end we'll do some voter registration training for those who have not had it or those who need to get a refresher. So, I'm going to start out by not speaking for very long at all, but what I will talk about is, Meg, I promise. Jeez. Come on, guy.
There, it's on.
There he is. I'm going to talk about a little analogy here, and hopefully I won't overextend it. Those of you who know me well know that I am a baseball obsessive, and spring training's here, so I'm very excited. This is George Steinbrenner, and if you know your baseball history, you know that Mr. Steinbrenner, when he was alive, was the owner of the Yankees, and back in the late 70s and 80s, he became the most famous part of the Yankees for all the wrong reasons. He hired and fired managers. He paid free agents much more than they were worth. And he made a mess of the team. And if you're like me, you've watched Ken Burns' baseball documentary about 40 times, right? And there's a fantastic piece in that documentary about George Steinbrenner and what he did to the Yankees. And there is a quote from a very famous baseball author named Roger Engel, who said that back in the late 70s and 80s, he became immensely frustrated because he would go to Yankee Stadium and he would feel that George Steinbrenner was always in the row in front of him and was always standing up. And so all he could see was George Steinbrenner when he wanted to be watching the Yankees. So my analogy here is that I've been thinking about this for a year because this is how I feel about the CVUSD board. We all know that our school district is a wonderful place full of fantastic teachers, great student experiences. It has its flaws, but we all know that it's a very good district. But for the last year, and really ever since Mike Dunn has been there, it has been difficult to see that sometimes because our board gets in the way. Our board is constantly standing in front of us, sometimes making it, sometimes not all of them, present company accepted, shall we say.
The males are.
Don't worry, it's fine.
Sorry, Betsy. Anyway, making it very difficult for us to see the finer qualities of our school district because they're always yelling at each other and doing some terrible things in this majority. We need to fix that. We need to make it so we don't have to look around our board majority in order to see the great things about our school district. That's the work we're doing this year.
Thank you, John. It's nice to be in a room of very smart people.
Louder, please.
Okay, louder? How's that?
That's better.
Better? Okay. Thank you all for coming. Thrilled to see you, and I think it says something really wonderful about our community that in a time of great need, these four really articulate, really smart, really principled, really good people have stood up to serve. I'm happy to be with them. I'm happy to share them with you. This forum is pretty low tech. This is a supportive room. Thank you for offering them the opportunity to strengthen the muscles of speaking publicly and fielding questions. They're already pretty darn good at it, but you're helping them today to get a little bit better for the months ahead. So here's how we're going to do it. There are basically three parts to this forum. In the first part, we want to give you an extended period of time with each of the four candidates. So each of them, and they drew lots to choose their order of speaking, and Nelson will lead off. Each of them will give an opening statement of roughly 3 minutes. And then I will ask each of them 3 questions. One roughly about the campaign, one roughly about board governance, and one about the hot issue of what we can do to keep our schools safe and prevent gun violence. Then, after each of the four has had an opportunity to speak to you and field a couple of questions, we'll move into the second part where I'll pose a few questions to the panel at large, and they'll speak in order. And then we'll leave a little bit of time at the end for you to pose them some questions, and then we'll wrap up. So, let's get started. Nelson drew first place to speak. The candidates are, yeah, that's exactly right. That's what happens when you're late, Nelson. They're in order. So, Nelson, the floor is yours.
All right, so I'm Nelson Buss. I'm a local father, husband, businessman. I've been a resident of Thousand Oaks for 29 years. I spent my youth all over this country and overseas. My father was a military officer. So when he finally left the military and settled into Southern California, we moved to Thousand Oaks, and I now live roughly 2 blocks from where I lived when I was in high school. I'm never moving again, and it's a big part of the reason why I've decided I'm going to be running as a candidate for school board, because now I have 2 young children of my own that I'd like to go through these schools, and I'd like to see these schools be, for them, what they were for me. My wife Amy is here. She's an Army veteran. She works as a teacher in the CVUSD. I'm also a stepfather to CJ, a Marine serving overseas in Japan right now, and Autumn, my stepdaughter, who is currently in college in Texas. Recreationally, I throw cabers for fun. I participate in the Scottish Island Games. So if there's something you need to remember about me to place me in your heads, that just picture me in a kilt throwing a telephone. I hope that by winning a seat on the school board, I can bring a new era of pragmatism and consensus building to the board that is sorely lacking at this time. I feel like that my skill set, I spent 20 years in automotive service and automotive service management, so I work with people with very diverse backgrounds. I work with clients with very diverse needs. I worked with owners who were desperate to take every dime possible from everybody at all times. And I was able to create consensus and to build relationships that allowed everybody to be reasonably happy about it. I've since translated that into my career in residential real estate, where I take people of 2 opposite ends of transactions and I try to make sure that everybody is happy when they're at the end of that transaction, because that's how those transactions are successful. And I think our school board needs to invest that kind of a mentality in how we represent the 20,000 students in our district. We need to make sure that we find a way to make sure that everybody is happy, everybody's satisfied, and everybody's needs are met, rather than playing this zero-sum game where everybody has to win. So that's what I'm looking for. Thank you very much.
Nelson, here's a question about the campaign up ahead. How will you counter negative campaigning that's directed at you should it occur?
I've already been on the receiving end of some negative comments in the Acorn. I received a threatening email from a school board member. I can only do what I can do, which is to continue to shift the conversation to the positives that we need to do. I'm not in this for my ego. I'm not particularly concerned about what people think of me. I want them to believe that what I want to do is in their best interest. And so as long as I can turn the conversation in that direction, I'm happy.
Beautiful. Nelson, here's a question about board governance. How will you balance short versus long-term spending priorities in the budget?
So short versus long-term spending priorities. I am very fortunate that we have some extremely experienced people working on our school board. Victor Hayek's one of those people, Mr. Issa. I trust Dr. McLaughlin. I believe that my experience doesn't gravitate towards knowing how a school is run. I don't know about these things, but we are hiring trained professionals, and we pay them a lot of money to know what to do in these events. We pay them to decide what to do with our current budget. We have an oversight committee for the I-bond money. We need to take the recommendations of the people that are studying these things and trust them to some degree. I don't believe that my job as a school board member is to write policies for people. I don't believe that my job as a school board member is to tell people what to do. My job is to represent the community and represent the interests of the community as they express them to the professionals that are responsible for doing these things.
Perfect. Here's a question about how to keep our schools safe and counter gun violence. In your opinion, are our existing campus security systems sufficient? What measures would you recommend to keep our school campuses safe?
It's been a tough conversation in this country for the last couple of weeks. It's been a tough conversation for me for a long time. My first service manager when I worked at Center of the Valley back in the 90s was a graduate of Columbine High School. And we watched that shooting in the lounge of our waiting room. And him and his wife were both graduates of that school, and he was stunned and horrified and in tears over it. One of the first times that I saw a grown man cry in a public setting. And so I've been watching these shootings unfold for a long time, and I'm horrified each time it occurs. At the same time, I think that the reality is that we can put fences around our schools. We can put metal detectors in every entrance. We can do all these things, but those are things that just make us feel better about it. Because the reality is that until we change our culture, until we change our culture of violence, until we change how we believe that guns are more important than human lives in this country, it's going to be a tough road to hoe. And I don't know how a school district by itself can create enough change, create enough security to make all of us feel like our children are going to be safe no matter what. I think our obligation at this point is to educate the next generation on the importance of resolving their conflicts without violence. I think that we need to start understanding that we need to treat each other like human beings, that we need to stop treating each other as the opposition. We need to stop seeing people who have a different belief set than us, or live differently than us, or look differently than us as the enemy, or somebody to be opposed, or somebody to be defeated. And if we can figure out how to do that as a culture, then we can make great inroads to making our children safer.
Sorry. He ran out
Just
of time.
under the wire.
Good job.
That was a really serious topic.
It was.
Bill, the floor is yours.
Good afternoon, and thank you for being here. And thank you, Jon and Indivisible Conejo, for sponsoring and setting this up. And thank you for proctoring this. My name is Bill Gorback. I was an elementary, middle, and high school teacher for over 17 years. And then I was a school counselor for about 18 years in middle school, a K-12 magnet. I was a district-wide special education counselor where I wrote and implemented counseling goals for students in 19 elementary schools and 5 middle schools. And then in another district where I split my duties between 2 middle schools and then became the counseling department by myself of one of those middle schools. Locally, I've been vice chair of the Citizen Bond Eye Oversight Committee, have served on the CVUSD Wellness Committee, where I strongly advocated for social and emotional components of the wellness programming, have attended almost every one of the district advisory council meetings for the last 4 years, where I have learned more about each individual school program than even I do with the board meetings. And I have attended all the CVUSD board, just about all the CVUSD board meetings in the last 4 years. As Dr. Conley said, Conejo Unified is a great district. We have always been a great district. We have great schools. Okay? We are strongest when we consider the best educational opportunity for each individual child. It's all about the kids. This means inclusion of those who learn in unique ways together with traditional learners, special education learners in classes with gifted and talented learners, and language learners with mainstream learners. All means all learning together, because each benefits from learning with the other. CVUSD has got to continue increasing, providing for the social and emotional needs for each and every child. We have to expand our Memorandum of Understanding with additional counselor training programs so that we have more trained counselor personnel to work with our kids, as well as we need to hire down the student to counselor ratios. We have to do everything possible to be responsible for the LCAP goals, enhancing the culture and conditions that optimize learning for all students, maximize student achievement through highly effective instruction that includes opportunities for academic acceleration and intervention, and engage students through quality student activities, like those like Newbury Park's major program and their extraordinary culinary arts program, one that I'm anxious to sample sometime, Thousand Oaks Ethos program, the Center for Advanced Study and Research, and the AP Capstone Project, and the Academy at Westlake. We have great programs. We have to continue those programs to draw people. What I want to do is get back to the board I first started witnessing, which was a board that got along well with each other, that produced for the kids, that was able to listen to each other and hear and come up with solutions. That's where I think, as a counselor, I've learned those skills. That's what I think I can bring to the board. Thank you.
Bill, thinking about the campaign ahead, sketch out some milestones for us. What will your campaign look like in May, in August, and in the final week before voting takes place?
It's hard for me to separate campaign from what I've done just to learn. I've been going, as I mentioned, I've gone to DAC council meetings. That serves my campaign, but it also was for, the purpose of it was for learning all about schools. I've gone to school board meetings. What I will do in May, I hope to have some organizational endorsements at that time. As I'm doing now, I will continue going to neighborhoods. My goal is to hit every neighborhood in the Conejo and knock on doors and just work face to face. I've gotten a lot of positive comments. I've gotten people that have said, I had one gentleman who said, I've lived in this house 46 years and no candidate for school board has ever come to my front door. I also had someone, when I went out a couple of weeks ago on a rather cool, chilly, windy, somewhat rainy afternoon, they said, if you're doing this, you must really love our kids. Yes, I do. And that's what I hope to do. I will continue doing that up until November 5th. I'm going to take the morning of the 6th off, but up until November 5th, and work on that. And with the endorsements, I will have a social media campaign where I'll try to get in touch with as many people as we can. I will arrange for friends to get on next door so we can push the conversation. I heard you, Betsy.
Can't campaign there.
Can't campaign, but I'll have people get in the conversation, and just make it a thorough, knowledgeable constituency of what's going on in the district.
Question about board governance. Board members' oversight responsibilities require an understanding of everything from student discipline to HVAC systems to nutrition. What's an area of weakness for you now, and how will you educate yourself?
Well, of those three, let me start off. I always like to look at positives. So let me start off with the strengths. I have been involved with student discipline. Now, I have a different definition of discipline from the counselor's point of view. I don't think I used to have, sometime I would have teachers that would be disappointed if a student came back to their class, maybe with all their appendages attached. But I believe in stopping bad behavior. I believe in making students understand. So discipline is a strong point for me. Three, you said the HVAC I'm going to get to last because that's the weak point. What was the one?
Nutrition.
Oh, nutrition. I am on the wellness committee. I am learning a lot about proper nutrition, making sure that our clubs, our student groups follow the rules. And one of the things that most people in our district do not know is that our food services is, with all the districts I've been in, is probably the best that I've ever seen. When we had a program one time between the groundbreaking for the new high school and the board meeting that night, and they served food, I could not believe that all the food came from our food services. So we have great food services that is nutritional. It tastes good and it's healthy for them. We have a great nutritional program, but I will continue to push for nutritional rules. As far as your question, the weakness, yes, technologically or scientifically, HVAC systems, just to piggyback off of what Nelson said, there are strengths in our district that I don't have that I would depend on the experts. Victor and the staff, the company that makes I'm looking back at Doug Freed, the company that makes our HVAC systems. Okay, I'll just finish my sentence. The company makes our we have great experts in the district. I would hear about the finances and using our money in the best way, but I defer to the experts as far as things that I don't know about.
Terrific. Question about school safety. Preparation and training are important elements of any security plan, but training for a traumatic event that is statistically unlikely to occur can itself be traumatic to school staff and especially to students. How does our district strike the proper balance of readiness for threats without instilling fear?
You asked the perfect question. Safety on our schools and security has to be a balance. Our students don't want to go to some place where they feel they are encompassed in imprisoned in a strict kind of military base mentality. They want to go with the freedom to learn. We have to make sure that they understand. We have to explain to them that yes, if something should happen, they need to follow their teachers' directions. The teachers need to make sure that they're smooth with what's going on. I'm going to get into a political fight with people in Washington. Our teachers do not need to be armed with guns. Our teachers didn't train to be marksmen. And, well, I'm sorry. Sure, there's always an exception. There's always an exception to the rule. But most of our teachers did not do most of their training to be marksmen. And in a situation, as I understood or read about with Marjorie Stoneham Douglas High School, the kids were obviously upset. They were not the most orderly as normal. How does a teacher know, they're not going to come out and be perfectly smooth, and they're not going to be willing to run and attack the gunmen like our president said he would have been. Never mind. What we have to do is have trained people do this. Yes, we have to make sure that our teachers know that in a crisis they need to follow directions. But we have to maintain that balance. It's an important balance.
Nicely done. Round of applause for Bill. Jenny, the floor is yours.
Hi, my name is Jenny Fitzgerald. I have 2 kiddos in our district in elementary school right now. My bio is on my website and my Facebook page, and I hope that you will all look at it and learn a little bit more about my basic background. But I wanted to instead share a story with you that I think only a couple of you have heard, so I hopefully won't bore too many of you, about how I first came to learn that if you want change in your community, you have to be a person who's willing to stand up and create that change. And being on just the tail end of making the millennial generation, which I am proud of, I have to take you back just a few years to high school. My high school civics class, and this is one of the reasons I am so thankful for many of my teachers. My husband and I come from a small town, and as a lot of small towns are, we were a big football town. And our project was to find an issue and present it to a group in our community. So I spoke to our PTA and our school board about the fact that when our high school was completely rebuilt, beautiful, a few years prior, and funds ran out, what got cut, as is so often the case, was our fine arts building and the classrooms that went with it. And for admitted band nerds, that was unfortunate. And we all were packed into an old, an old small classroom down on the Brandon football field. And over the few years where continual improvements were made to this new school, nothing happened with that fine arts building, and I thought that was an issue. So I learned over the course of a few months that most of the school board members dismissed me as a teenager, and then became very aggravated and annoyed with me when I continued showing up. But there was one member who guided me and another student to identify bond money that could be used to build that building that had been promised. And we went out for months and gathered and rallied our community together, reminding them about the need for this building. And when I have the chance to go back up and drive by the beautiful fine arts building that stands on that campus now, and when I see on Facebook the drama plays and the concerts that are taking place in that building, it reminds me of the 2 things that I learned. One is the power of students, which I think we see today so clearly. The power of a community rallying together for something that's important. And 2, how important it is that all students feel valued. Not just those that we hope to uplift in an academic way, but students who have different and unique skills. We need to make sure that we, as a community, and hopefully as a school board, are providing them the opportunity to grow and develop using their own skills and their own interests. Thank you.
Thank you. Jenny, a question about the campaign. What networks provide support for your candidacy? How will you expand that base of support during the campaign?
So right now, some of the biggest networks that provide support for my campaign are fellow parents. As I mentioned, our kids are in elementary school, and so there are a lot of parents that have valid concerns about what's been going on. And thankfully, because our kids are involved in extracurricular activities, the parent base is not just limited to the elementary school that our kids go to. We know parents from all across the district. Another base that I have really been trying to reach out to, because given very unfortunate events on our board and with other community members, are teachers. Because I think that teachers right now are in an environment where it's very hostile for them to speak up. And they need people that are willing to do so on their behalf. And so that's a group that to me is very important. And I want to continue to grow that population of support for this campaign and our vision for our children. My husband and I both work for big companies in our community. My husband works for Amgen, which, you know, like 1 of every 3 people works there. And I work for Anthem Blue Cross. And you would be surprised how many people you work with in our community know about what's going on, right? Whether they have children, whether they're younger, and are thinking of having children in the future, we really need to think about that population as well. That is another area of support. One that I really want to work on expanding is the youth vote. We need to get these kids in our community involved. They've seen other kids throughout the nation standing up, and they have that ability too. We've seen it, and I want to reach out to them and involve them in our mission to do support.
Thank you. Question about board governance. We've seen some controversial issues over, in particular, the past year. How will you navigate public outcry over controversial issues like the relocation of Conejo Valley High School, or curriculum issues like the FAIR Act, or core literature approval, alternative assignment practice?
So here's what I see as the biggest problem there. It's that stakeholders that should have been involved in many of those issues were not involved from the get-go, or were done so in a way that was simply done for public appearance. We should be involving the people that have a stake in those issues, that have experience with those issues, whether that be students, teachers, experts in our community. We need to be involving them so that they have that feedback that's so important to provide, and we're actually taking it in. One of the speakers at the foundation event last night that I thought was so moving talked about building a community. And the way that you build a community is you reach out to people and you take in new ideas and you work together to find common ground. That doesn't mean at the end of the day everyone's idea is going to be used, but it means that you had a part in building what eventually is the outcome. And I think that has the effect of diluting some of the just really the anger about what's happening. The other piece I just want to mention quickly is that we've seen policies being pushed through so quickly recently, right? And that's not how policy should work. It doesn't benefit our children, and it doesn't benefit our teachers. We need to be using the experts on the district staff, asking lots of good questions like Betsy tries to ask, but others continue to push forward without answers. We want those answers, so we're developing policies that really work, and so that people can see that effort has been put into making sure we have the best that we possibly can.
Thank you. Question about school safety and the threat of gun violence. Student leaders here in the district, in solidarity with their peers in Parkland, Florida, and nationwide, are planning protests targeting grown-ups in action on preventing gun violence. Do you support students' protest actions in the schools?
Yes, resounding yes. Okay, there's no question to me about this. There's no wiggle room on this issue. Protesting and learning to protest about things that are important to you is something you should learn as a student. To me, that's a vital part of our education. We teach it to our own kids. Some people know I took my daughter to the Women's March and got some flack about some pictures I posted online about it. I stand behind it. She learned real life things from that one day at that protest that she will take with her for the rest of her life, and it will shape the person that she becomes. These children are standing up saying, enough. We have not done for them what we should have been doing. We have failed them, and they are taking it into their own hands, and we should be doing everything we can to support them and guide them to the extent that they want it. Want that guidance so that they can get out there, and hopefully, I hope that this is the change that's coming, and they're going to be our future leaders. So we need to let them start as young as they can.
Mary Ann.
Sunday afternoon. A little bit about myself. I'm a 15-year Thousand Oaks resident. I have 2 kids who've gone through the schools. One just graduated and one is still at Westlake High School. My involvement as a parent actually began with an organization called Mothers and More when my kids were really little, and I was the advocacy chair looking at ways that we can improve rights for mothers, including parental leave. I worked in our PFA at Westlake Elementary, and the thing that I'm most proud of there is I instituted the Walking Wednesdays. because when I rode my bike with my kids to school, there were 5 pathetic bikes in the bike racks. But starting a Walking Wednesday program encouraged kids to walk and bike to school. And there are still 35 bikes in the bike racks when you go there on any given day, and they still have a Walking Wednesday program. I'm very proud of that. I'm a band mom. I have 2 lovely band geek children. And I serve as the travel chair for the big trip that goes to Fresno every year. So, you know, if you look at me, I'm not a spring chicken. And, you know, it never crossed my mind that I would run for public office. And the only reason it did cross my mind is because I think there's something terribly wrong. If you have 100 people coming to a school board meeting, time after time, where they're going to criticize members of the board or to yell at each other from the podium, the school board is doing something wrong. School board policy should be based on widely shared community values. And I would hope to bring that back to the board. One of the things that I think is most important to me in seeing kids through, you know, extracurricular activities and volunteering in my kids' schools is that, you know, not all kids are academic. And it's really important to have ways for kids to hook into school. For my kids, it was band. And, you know, you can't go to school. I mean, you can't go to band practice if you don't go to school. That's kind of like the rule in our house. And I think it's very important for us to find those ways to engage kids. And I think it's been spoken about here from the dais. And whether it's making sure that there are extracurricular activities that are available to all of our kids, or whether we bring in actual real life events into the classroom when we teach curriculum. So for instance, if you're teaching 12 Angry Men, why aren't we also looking at Zoot Suit or talking about racial bias in police arrests these days? I think it's important to kind of bring these controversial subjects into the classroom because we are raising young adults. And I think the more that we do that, the more that we can engage our kids in the classroom and in extracurricular activities. We have this really great resource in the Conejo Valley, and I know a lot of us moved here because of the schools, but we have a great open space here, and I would like to see more of our curriculum take place in the open space. How about a field biology class or an environmental science class or a poetry section where you're actually out in nature drawing inspiration, or more programs like the Newbury Park High School mountain bike team. I'm also more in favor of the district encouraging kids to walk and bike to school. That's something that I think has shown great benefits in terms of a little bit of exercise in the morning, activating the executive function for kids. It improves their health, it reduces traffic. So I hope you'll all join with me in supporting me to move toward a more consensus-based school board, and I look forward to your support. Thank you. I broke it.
Drop the mic.
Marianne, a question about the campaign.
Yes.
What 3 words will appear on the ballot by your name?
You know what? I don't know. I honestly don't know. I will put down a parent because I think that's very important, that people know that the reason why I'm running for the school board is a parent. But one of the strengths that I think I can bring to this board, and I don't know how to get it into this other 2 words, is that I am a scientist and I make decisions based on data. I'm really excited to see the school district embark on a new way of setting goals based on the local control accountability plan and actually aligning the budget with the goals that they set. And so I think that's a real strength that I would bring to the board, and I would hope to capture that in those other 2 words. But if anybody has any great ideas. I think scientist is like a little too broad, but data analyst, people are like, I don't know. But that's what I would hope to convey because I really think that's the strength that I bring to the board. So please come see me if you have any great ideas.
Thank you. Question about board governance.
Yes.
Name 2 concrete actions the district could adopt that would make the CVUSD more competitive than neighboring districts in attracting new students and their families.
Great. So I think one of the things that is happening that's making our district more attractive is the development of magnet programs in our elementary schools. I know that particularly there are certain elementary schools that have had a big turnaround in terms of parents wanting to send their students there. Acacia with its Genius Hour and the way that parents are really involved. And Walnut, where they're really taking a look at every student's achievement and trying to increase everybody's learning in that school is just so attractive. The Conejo Open Classroom is really, really attractive. So if we have these centers where we're really doing best practice at the elementary school level, I think that that can make a big difference. And another concrete action that I think that we can take is doing a better job of marketing to the community all of the excellent programs we have at our high school. I mean, I'm still learning all of the things that you can do in all of our high schools, all the different language programs, all of the career technical education paths, whether it's AP photography or a really strong journalism program at Newbury Park High School. I really think that we could do a better job of marketing that to the community because we have so many things to be proud of. And these are things that can't always be offered at a private school. At a private school, they're often very small. And you can't have the breadth of experience that you get in a public high school.
Thank you. Question now about school safety. Recently, graffiti at Westlake High School was investigated as a possible gun violence threat. Comment on the way this possible threat was communicated to families and your recommended strategies for communicating with district families about threats.
So I have a child at Westlake High School, and I was disappointed in the communication that came to me as a parent. I learned about the threat on social media, and what I heard were texts going back and forth. Are you sending your kid to school? I'm sending my kid is having a nightmare. Should I send him to school? And I had a conversation with Mr. Branham after that, the principal at Westlake High School, and I was disappointed in that he said he wouldn't do it any differently. I think the police were investigating, and they had decided that it was a hoax, but they weren't giving the details out because they were investigating. And I think if you are weighing the balance, if you know it's a hoax and you're trying to catch a teenager who perhaps perpetrated a hoax, versus letting the parents of 2,200 students know exactly what's going on in the school and whether they should send their kids to school, I think they made a horrible judgment. I think in this time, parents really need to trust their schools that they're going to keep their kids safe. And the only way that you build that trust is by being open and honest, even if it's scary and even if the school has shortcomings. You really have to be forthcoming, and that's what I expect as a parent, and that's what I expect from our district.
Thank you. Part one, and now I'm going to ask the candidates to all answer a couple of questions, and then we'll move on to have some questions from the audience. So first question, and let's go in opposite order if you don't mind. So Marianne will ask you to kick off, and then we'll just go right down the table.
Sure.
A nationwide Gallup student poll recently found student engagement dropping consistently as students age, bottoming out in grade 11. What measures can we take here in the CVUSD to keep our students engaged, hopeful, purposeful, and successful as they progress through middle and high school?
The first thing I want to say is we have to acknowledge that this is the period of adolescence where things that the parents think are important can take a back seat to what the kids think are important. Being interested in people of the opposite sex, kind of breaking away from, you know, what's expected, and they're trying to find themselves. So I think a little bit of this is perhaps natural, but that's not to let the schools off the hook. I think that what is required is, you know, we have these state curriculum standards that we're supposed to teach and the expectations that we have of our kids. But I really think that we need to give the teachers, we need to encourage the teachers the freedom to bring in real world examples of what kids are learning to help them understand why it's important to them. I mean, so the kids actually get a sense of why something might be important to them and important to their lives. I also think it's important to expand the career technical education pathways that we have in the district and bring back some of the areas where kids who are tinkerers have a chance to do a kind of hands-on learning that can keep them engaged. Thank you.
So I think for me, there's a lot of things we could be doing, two of which are showing kids at a young age what they can actually do with what they're learning when they are adults, if they continue on this path of continuous learning. For example, at our children's elementary school, Lane Ranch, they recently had a family science night, which sounds fun, and it was. They got to get, you know, their hands on different science experiments, but what impressed me the most was that they had brought in local scientists, real scientists from our community, of which we have many. Some were parents and some were just volunteers. And they greeted them when they came, and they were talking to them about their jobs and what they do and trying to engage the children. And we saw all genders, different ethnicities, different ages represented. So children, all children can see that there is really good things they can be doing in their future. The second part is in being more inclusive and continuing on the path of reaching out to kids like gay students, special ed students, English learners at a young age so that they're really supported at that age and start to have the foundation of believing that they can succeed further on.
We have to take students from where each individual student is and bring them to their maximum potential. The way you do that is by not only finding out where they are skill-wise, but where they are interest-wise. We have some great programs in the district. Newbury Park High School's Majors program, the Ethos Academy at Thousand Oaks, and the Center for Advanced Study and Research, and the AP Capstone Project at Thousand Oaks, the Academy at Westlake High. What these programs do is they give the students a chance to we have a framework of education that, of course, all teachers have to teach from the state, but they get the students to go to that framework from an area of where they are interested in. That gets students engaged and involved. We also, some of those programs, the Academy at Westlake and the Center for Advanced Studies, and, well, all of them, are a cadre of students that take their classes together. This gets students involved because they are with the same people all the time in a nice, close group. Sometimes that's good, sometimes it's not. But they're in the same group that they work with, which develops close friendships that I have heard from students that last long beyond walking across that stage at the end of graduation. So it's getting students involved with each other, getting students involved with their interest level.
I think as far as I'm concerned, schools are a place where we learn to be socialized, where we learn to become a functioning part of society. And so when we say that students are becoming less engaged, we're actually saying that we're failing them in teaching them how to become socialized, how to become engaged with one another. I'm sitting in a room with several people that I've known for almost 30 years that I went to high school with right now. And they've become my lifelong friends. And I think that it's critical for us to figure out at the scholastic level how to make sure that students find their place in their social community within their schools. Mary Ann Van was talking about her children being band geeks in the community there. I was in choir. I was also in athletics. I ended up being the president of my choir my senior year. It's a group of people that I'll never forget and that I got to be a part of. And I think that it's critical for us as adults to make sure that we communicate the importance and that we show children there's a place where you can fit in any school, and there's a place where you can find your community and find your home. And it's important for us as school board members, as educators, as community members, to find ways to make sure that we help children understand how important it is to find a community within yourself. I'm also a Rotary member, and we're doing the 4-way essay contest, and we provide cash prizes to students who write these essays. I find that it's less important that we give these kids cash financial rewards for their essays, and more important that we actually invite them to one of our Rotary meetings where they can see a group of adults who banter together, who make fun of each other, who bond with each other, who raise each other up, so that they know that the same things that happen to you when you're 16, 17 years old are the things you'll be doing in your 30s, 40s, and 50s. And so I think it's important for us to find a way to communicate to our children. Engagement within your scholastic environment doesn't necessarily have to mean that you're the best math student or that you're the best athlete. It's just that you need to make sure that you find a home and you find people that you have a common bond with. And that way we can keep our children engaged in going to school and being a part of their community.
Thank you all. Okay, I have a lightning round question for you. Starting with Nelson and going down the table. This is a simple yes or no, okay? Do you support adding a student member with voting privileges to the CVUSD board?
That's a yes or no question?
That's a yes or no.
Who determines the student?
Yeah.
Would they be a second grader or a senior?
Let's say it's a student leader from one of our 3 high schools.
Student leader from one of 3 high schools. If it's the gentleman who plays basketball at Newbury Park High School, he has
I would expand that to one of our 5 high schools, but I would say yes, definitely. I think we're here for the students. They should be here and have a voice.
Jenny?
Okay, so I get to add a little to my yes from you guys. I would say yes, but I think that there are many legitimate questions and things that would have to be worked out about that. But let me say that I was the student trustee on the community college board for Contra Costa Community College when I was in college, and it was an amazing experience, and I think I offered a lot, and I think students would offer a lot in this similar type of situation.
Mary Ann?
Yes. With part of the caveat has to be that the original selection has to come from students. There should be no board input, and the final selection should be done by the superintendent. But I also think that it might mean expanding the board to 7 members if they're going to be a voting member, because I think it's important to have a broad adult, not in a pejorative way, but a broad, lots of experience on the board. So, yes, let's do it.
Thank you all. Okay, let's move down the table again from Nelson, straight that way. Declining enrollment and budget shortfalls are closely related. How do you propose to keep enrollments and budgets healthy?
One of the most important things the school board can do, which Dr. Conley is great at, is she is a tremendous cheerleader for all of the programs that CVUSD offers. And I wish that we could see that from everybody on our school board. I think that because the school board represents the community to the district, the school board also needs to represent the district to the community. We need to let the entire community know what's going on, what's available, what's happening. And I think that would enhance our ability to gain more students and to reduce the amount of students leaving the district. The other element that we can address as far as budget shortfalls go is, which we saw last night at the Conejo Schools Foundation, is that there is a tremendous amount of money available from private resources. And we do an excellent job of availing ourselves of that, and I think that we need to continue to make that an area of emphasis in our community. I think it's the responsibility of the community itself to do that, and I'm very hopeful and I'm very confident that that's of great importance to us all in this community, so it will continue.
In the past, maybe 2 years, 3 years, we have hired a marketing director. She's great. She's very good. I think we need to build on that. We have such great programs. You know, the International Baccalaureate program at Newbury Park, the programs I've mentioned, the Center for Advanced Studies at TO, the Academy at Westlake. We have great programs that give kids so many options to study what they want to study to get to the point of what's in the framework. We have programs that would almost give no reason to go elsewhere unless you have, you know, religious preferences and you want to go to a Christian or something to that effect. But the quality of our programs are fantastic. We have to market them better. We have to get articles for each program in papers like the Acorn or the Star or stuff like that. We have to let the community know that the quality of our programs is second to none. And there's no reason, there's no better program at, I won't mention the districts, but our neighboring districts that anyone should leave for. We have good programs. We just have to let the community know about them. And yes, I think we have to be cheerleaders and have our professionals market to the full extent.
So we need to retain our current families and attract new ones. That's going to have a direct effect on our budget, which is going to have difficulties in the years to come if we don't do that. One of the top ways we do that is by similarly retaining and attracting new quality teachers. And two ways I think we can do that is we need to continue supporting having new affordable housing. We have so many teachers that work in our district that cannot afford to live here. And I've heard that from many teachers in our district. We have a lot of families that can't afford to live in our district. Secondly, let's get a new board makeup. So we have a majority board that supports and values our teachers so that the ones we have will stay and not leave. The other part I would say is let's be the district that continues to have a space for all children. Let us find ways, as we're starting to do, and I don't want the board makeup right now to take away these opportunities, to find ways for inclusive education and to find ways to be the schools that can educate and make all children successful.
I think the school board's main purpose is to focus on the students, but I also think a school board has a political role. I think it's important for the school board through the Conejo School Board Association to lobby for full funding at the state and for increased funding for education. At the federal level, we receive less than what was intended for special education. We should be lobbying at the federal level to make sure that we get full funding. I also think it's important that we do bring more affordable housing into the city, and I think that we can work with the city itself to do that, because even if what we're talking about are condos on the boulevard, that maybe not the place for you want to raise a family, but a young couple might move in and decide to settle down in Thousand Oaks, and they will have started building equity in real estate at Thousand Oaks prices. So even if it's not necessarily family housing that we're building on the boulevard or at the old Kmart site in my neighborhood, I think it's very important to increase housing stock overall. And I think I spoke in one of my other questions about how to increase enrollments.
All of you came with questions, or you've dreamed some up while we've been speaking here. So who has a question, we'll get a mic to you, and please feel free to address individual candidates or to ask for all of the candidates to give you a response.
Hi, my name is Susan Kaufman. I have one child who is in middle school here. And I have a couple questions I'd like to ask, but the one that I feel I need to ask first is how you all feel about the separation of church and state.
Okay, let's keep church and state separate.
We all either are candidates for the position or those people that are in the position have sworn to uphold the secular state-run school district of our area. That means that if our decisions, I'm not indicating any one person, but if our decisions are dictated by our religious beliefs, then they are not in the proper form of separating the religious beliefs from our secular school district. We need to keep those separate. We need, again, it's all about the kids. And we need to do what's best for students, not our particular religious views. So let's separate church and state.
Yeah, for me, this goal and this vision of having an inclusive district for our children cannot happen if there's not a separation of church and state. And I think that often when we say things like that, what the conversation turns to being against those that have religious views, and that's just not true. It is simply that in our public education system, that's not what we're focusing on, and it's not going to be an inclusive environment if that becomes what we're making decisions based upon.
I don't think you're going to find anybody that's going to advocate for a theocracy up here. But it's important to recognize the fact that all of us in this community do have some religious view of some type. And I think it's important to recognize that because of that, we need to be conscious of one another's beliefs and to be sensitive to one another's beliefs. And I think we can do that without advocating anybody particular's beliefs. But we have an ever-growing South Asian community, which includes people who are of Muslim descent. We have obviously a very large fundamentalist Christian community in the area, and I think that there's room for everybody under the table without picking sides or choosing sides. But I think it's important to acknowledge that some people's beliefs are very important to them, and that we cannot disregard them just because we have it codified in our laws that we're not going to advocate one over another. We do have to be understanding of each other, and I think it's important to recognize that people's beliefs are very important to them, regardless of what our individual beliefs are. And so if we can find ways to cooperate and to work harmoniously with each other, I think that's always important.
Hello, Joanna Burns, English teacher at Thousand Oaks High School. I wrote it down, so bear with me. To the detriment of many student programs, including sports teams and academic electives, our previous superintendent really changed the culture of support in our district by advertising the option of donations to programs. All sports and groups must now fundraise thousands of dollars and beg for money just to play, pay coaches, or attend academic conventions. And most times the effort is made by few parents and not all. So what ideas do you have to bring the funds back to the schools so our kids can actually do these fun things, these extracurricular activities, and go to conventions and things that bring a different aspect of school to their lives? We were talking about community. And how do you propose to change the culture back to where the parents are responsible, you know, to help fund these things in the schools their children attend?
May I start?
Yes, ma'am.
So I have experience as a band booster mom. And so the way that it was explained to us was that we could not require a student who wished to participate to pay $945 to be in marching band. Yeah, wow, right? And if they play jazz, it's, you know, another $400. personally think that funding should come from the state, and in other states, it does come from the state. There are districts in New Jersey where there's a piano in every classroom, and I think that the state, I think that we as citizens have our priorities wrong in terms of where our state government funds go. So I think that's one way in which the board has to be political, because we have to advocate for a change in that. I don't think we're ever going to go back to a point in time where we can say that your fair share is $945, because I know there's a girl in color guard that can't do that. She just can't. Her family can't. And so we have changed the language, and we have, changed the language to donations, that they have to be donations. And it just breaks my heart that we have to pay for it at all, because that's not right. It should be part of public education.
I'll go next. My sister has a daughter who is 6 years old, who attends Madronia. And her first year there, we found out that they don't have an official art program. They have art docents who volunteer and come into the schools to teach the children art. And I didn't attend elementary school in Conejo Valley, so I can't vouch for what Conejo Valley's policy was, but I do remember having art classes when I was in elementary school. And my sister actually worked very hard to make sure that they were fully funded and have a teacher over there now for the art program. But I concur with Marianne Ben Zuyle. I think that this is something that we need to figure out how to pay for. I think the arts are as important as sports, and sports are critical. And like I was saying earlier about how you build children's involvement and engagement in the school, is you find ways to put them in programs that they can discover and they can blossom, they can find themselves and find friends and find connections and community. And we have to make that a priority in education. And if it is a political battle, I'm very content to wage that political battle.
I think the groups we were talking about, whether they be sports teams or whether they be academic teams or mock trial teams, of which my daughter participated in extensively, they're teams. And so I think we have to look at three ways. Yes, if the district has funds that they can do, we could pay as much as we can. Obviously, we can't cover the whole district. But I think when the teams raise funds, they raise funds as a team. We don't keep accounting measures and say, well, this child gets to go for free because he raised, X amount of dollars. This child has to pay extra because she couldn't raise that many dollars. We raise funds for the team, as a team, and divide it by the team. And the district needs to supplement, and then we also have to politically go after funds from other sources like the state or we need to request and ask for funds from the foundation. So it's a variety of sources, but we do it as a team and as a whole group.
So it's an interesting question, and let me say that I'd like to talk to you about more of the details from where your question is coming from. I think that we're really lucky that we can provide, our own family can provide our children with paying for sports, extracurricular activities, and getting them extra help when they need it so that they can, be successful in their own right. But I grew up as a kid who couldn't afford to go to some of these extracurricular things that my friends did for clubs that I was involved in. We just didn't have the money. So, and my husband he coaches Little League. And I think sometimes living in this community, we forget that there are a lot of kids right here that can't afford these types of things and don't have these opportunities. So I'm not sure I have the answer to give you right now, but I'm certainly interested in it, and I think it's something we should talk about.
Population who are Latino. I look around this room and we are activists to be giving up a Sunday afternoon to sit here. But let's face it, this room is pretty lily white with a few exceptions.
That's right.
But that is an issue within the district, and it is one that I'm passionate about. Is how do you, as school board candidates, reach out to that population that is served by the Conejo School District? And second part, how do you, as a school board member, also provide more events or whatever you want to call it, to involve that particular part of our Thousand Oaks greater community?
So the honoree, this is on, sorry.
Yes, it
Yes. The honoree last night at the foundation talked about how she went out into the community and brought in, reached out to families who didn't speak English, were afraid to ask questions, and weren't getting the support that they needed as a family and for their kids. And she was able to make massive change to that. I think we need to be getting more of those individuals who can help us with those efforts. As far as my campaign, one of the things I plan to do is I can hear it when I'm in and out. Okay. One of the things I plan to do is have some of my material in Spanish. Yeah. Oh, good. Okay. So one of the things I plan to do for some of my campaign materials that are more substantive is to have them in Spanish, which I'll have to have somebody else do, unfortunately. I don't have that skill, but I think it's important that we're showing we're reaching out to more individuals within our community, and that we are making an effort to make everyone feel included. So.
I am going actually tomorrow to the Conejo Elementary Open Classroom Leadership Magnet to take a tour of the school. They have some great programs to include the students and the parents. I went there for Parent Information Night, and it was such a pleasure to see so many parents show up. I think I don't know how this was marketed, why we only have, why we don't have more minority or Hispanic people here. But I think what we have to do is when we have events to reach out to the school, have evening events, make the families of the students of minority schools be the stars and introduce their culture to the other families at that school. So I think, we have to reach out, have evening. When I was at a school in LA Unified, we did International Night, and we had people of various international cultures bring food, teach us dances, have music. They attended that because they felt respected and included. I think we have to do more evening affairs like that. I think I've always been an advocate, coming from a counselor, being former president of the California School Counselor Association. I always advocated that schools have a counselor on the 1 to 9, just let me finish the sentence, on the 1 to 9 shift, so that counselors could be available for parents and families in the evening. I think that that's a valuable thing.
Fun fact, in my travels as a young child, as an Army grad, I spent the first 5 elementary school years of my life attending schools in Germany and Holland. I was attending the actual local German schools and the actual local Dutch schools. I was the only English speaker in most of those schools. And had to learn the native tongue in order to float. So I speak German and Dutch conveniently, but I know what it's like to be an outsider in a community that's very homogenous because of that. I remember attending my first day of school in Holland and being surrounded by literally hundreds of students who had never seen an American before in this little tiny town. And so I am very sensitive to the fact that people can feel like an outsider in the world they find themselves in. And I think that it definitely needs to be a priority for the CVUSD to find ways to make student populations that feel like they're not a part of the student population part of our community and to include them. And we need to do it obviously on a case-by-case basis in the schools, depending on the population size and what needs to be done there. But I do think that's a priority. We are a nation of immigrants, and we need to be sensitive to the fact that we need to make them feel like they're a part of this community as well.
So, okay, that's good. I know that AAUW is involved with DACA students in our high schools here. So our school district is the only one in the Ventura County that has not declared itself as a sanctuary district. So I really don't know how we can possibly expect to have parents be involved when we will not assure their safety if they are undocumented immigrants. I think that's we have to fundamentally fix that particular problem. We can't say, please come in and we're not going to protect you. Okay? So I think that's what they're saying. I think it does start at the schools and making sure that you're actively going out and recruiting parents to come in. And successful programs in our schools include English classes for parents who don't necessarily speak English. So, how to not have this room be really white? I think it's all on us, Sally, all of us. We all have to examine our privilege and think about the ways that our circle of friends look just like us, because we aren't willing to talk about why society perceives us as different.
Thank you all. I think we need to wrap up because we have one more segment of the presentation today. If you have a question and you weren't able to address it, know that this is not your final opportunity. It's just the first of many opportunities. And let's thank these candidates who've done a spectacular job today.
Okay, that's it for today. I want to thank again all of our candidates, Dr. Connolly, Lauren Gill, an amazing job by everybody, Henry,